Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest Reversion webinar we have today, uh, titled Why Smart CPG Brands Pair Affiliates and 3PL to Reclaim Time as They Scale. Today, I'm really excited to have Michael Shoemaker from Remix Logistics joining me today. Mike, great to see you again, like the third time in the past few weeks. How are you doing today?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm doing great.
Awesome. I was just, complaining about the weather here. So I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's 40, which in the South is kind of cold for March, but not abnormal. It was 80 this weekend. Like that fluctuation really, we almost had the great pollinating, but now we're back in winter. But I imagine up in, well, you're based in Buffalo, that it's a bit colder, maybe still white snow on the ground or anything like that.
A little bit, yeah. It was warmer a few weeks ago. Winter has re-arrived, so that's really good. I'm a big skier. I wish it snowed in
Okay.
July. Many people won't say that, but yeah, no, it's you got to make the best of it.
Well, awesome. Well, just a couple of housekeeping things as we're getting started. If folks have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. This will be streamed and recorded on StreamYard, LinkedIn, and on YouTube. And if you miss it, you can always share it with others. We will be sharing it out with folks that registered that just missed attending today. Uh, I think the topic, Reversion is an affiliate tracking tool. And I think mostly folks think about that from a marketing lens, but in my head, there's something really, really critical when you're doing marketing and you're selling product and delivering on the fulfillment end of things, because you can really drop the ball when it comes to like people are now waiting for product, packaging wasn't great. Those specific things can really create a frustrating experience for those end users, those customers, and almost invalidate a lot of the work that brands do to try to build this audience in the first place. And that's why when I was talking to you, Mike, it's just I think the conversation is really an underrated conversation, like how you're thinking about getting these things that you're selling to your customers in an effective, efficient manner, both efficient from a time perspective, but then also from a money perspective. I don't know if you'd agree with that or disagree with that.
Absolutely, yeah. When the in the CPG space, obviously being a physical goods company, shipping and logistics will always be a big driver in those
Yeah.
businesses, of course, and in those brands. A lot of brands typically start off with self fulfillment, eventually move into a 3PL. But there's a lot of different really good 3PLs and kind of different niches that can be supportive of brands, whether you're doing smaller order volume a day, dozen orders or less, or tens of thousands of orders a day, and anything and everything in between.
Yeah. Well, that's a good sort of initial segue. I'd love for you to introduce folks to who Remix Logistics is, a little bit of the background. I know that you co-founded it and you're the CEO, but I think the story is pretty interesting as well for folks. So maybe we could start there before we get into the meat of the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Mike Shoemaker, founder and CEO of Remix Logistics, based here in Buffalo, New York. The way in which we got into the 3PL space was pretty unique. More or less right place, right time. So we had an existing distribution and warehousing business here in Buffalo, New York, and a local company was looking for investors and looking for a warehousing partner. We ended up saying yes to both. They were smaller. They were doing less than $1 million a year in annual revenue. And over the next few years, we helped them grow all the way up to $40 million in annual revenue. As we started to work with a lot of other brands, we saw the same challenges and hiccups that this brand saw as they continued to scale. And what we're really going out and trying to solve for is most 3PL and brand relationships are highly transactional. And a lot of brands, especially emerging brands that need a 3PL, need more than just a 3PL. They need a lot of operational support. And that's really what we do. So we work with a lot of early stage, sometimes even venture backed brands, doing most of the day to day operations. So think anything from inventory forecasting and demanding, running manufacturer RFPs, packaging design, launching and managing new sales channels, and obviously, of course, the traditional 3PL work where we're picking, packing, and shipping orders.
So one of the things that you mentioned a few times when we were talking, and you sort of alluded to it there, but Remix, you sort of work with folks throughout their brand life cycle, whether they're just shipping a dozen or 2 dozen things, that sort of willingness to grow with them, not just chase them when they're huge, when everybody obviously wants those customers. I think that might lead itself to this sort of like opening question that I have, which is when people start brands, it's just so easy to start a brand and to order goods from overseas. Even you could just do it with a shopping cart these days. They kind of they underappreciate this like fulfillment and delivery, and like it's almost like the end customer experience prior to them opening the box, like getting it to them. And as you've seen merchants go through this life cycle, especially if you're talking to them early before they've entered it, I'm just curious, like what kind of things do you see that brands are just not thinking about it when it comes to the fulfillment process, things that they might be missing on the self-fulfillment side, benefits that they could be gaining by working with somebody that's just so familiar with this space, whether it's time savings and space savings and not shipping air and all of those. Like what are just some of the things that you see that are important for merchants and emerging brands to think about?
Absolutely. Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head that it's really summarized in a few main categories, I would say. The first is, more or less time allocation, right? So working in the business versus on the business. So typically emerging brands, small founders or founder teams, they wear a lot of hats. They're the salesperson, they do marketing, they do the web dev, they do the ad creatives, they do the fulfillment a lot of times. And fulfillment is usually one of the things that is first to be delegated or outsourced. It is not overly complicated, I think, for 3PLs that have that type of infrastructure. And there's a lot of cost savings that also can be derived from working with a 3PL, specifically on the shipping and the shipping optimization side. The second category that I would say is that, especially with early brands, getting those orders and those first couple of orders in the life cycle of the brand is like really, really, really exciting. And eventually it turns from exciting into a little overwhelming or maybe even a burden, which is crazy to think of. Like, yeah, that's why we got into business in the first place. But trying to stay up to date with all of the different changes, with a lot of different marketplaces and sales channels, trying to put off different things like customer service or going back to that ad creative point that I had mentioned, and then just dealing with a lot of and processing through a lot of the things that come up, address changes, carrier chargebacks, customer service hiccups, all of those things I think are really, really advantageous of switching to a 3PL. And then obviously the spatial component too, to kind of summarize it, right? Taking back your office, garage, basement, storage units, and taking the ability to really work with a service provider that has that infrastructure, that has that equipment, that has that background expertise to really help take the brand to the next level.
So one of the things that it feels like if you've got this sort of fully fledged idea, you've got inventory, maybe you've even like you are venture backed, right? You've got some funding behind this. Is it the case where if you're not doing, like, should brands that aren't doing self-fulfillment, should they entertain like you don't really need to go through this process, or is there value in like understanding that self-fulfillment process first? What, like, when do you have folks that you say like, no, you're probably okay where you are now, this is when I think that you would derive more value? Is it in the experience? Maybe it's sort of an all over the place question, but the idea is really just if you're still formulating that end customer experience of when they get the box, they're still pretty early stage. When should they be thinking about like a boutique 3PL, a true sort of partner there? Is there value in doing self-fulfillment or not? Like, could you just like, yeah, you don't want to dread the most exciting facet of your business, which is selling things, but that inevitably can be what happens as you begin to dread the shipping label printer. But what would you say, just from what you've seen working with dozens and dozens and dozens of CPG brands of all sizes?
Absolutely. Yeah. What I would say is that there's not one size fits all, right? Every brand's a little different and unique. But the journey that the founder or the founding team wants to take and how aggressive they want to go and what they're looking to delegate, I think is usually when, whether it's a 3PL or some other agency or some other partner, that's when those, kind of opportunities can really come into the mix. But from a physical standpoint, let's say that we want to grow and we want to grow aggressively, I would say getting to that like 10 to maybe 12 orders a day is really when I would look to move to a 3PL. Partly that's time allocation. Some of that's also obviously the cost savings as well too. There's enough volume day over day over day that kind of justifies some of those cost savings, moving inventory, having it stored and received at a 3PL. But really that volume also helps with savings on shipping, savings on packaging, saving some of the time that you're able to reclaim to go focus on other avenues, whether it's raising funds, launching new channels, designing new packaging, managing that customer journey. It's not an exact science, but I would say somewhere between 10 to 12 orders a day, or lots of orders all at once. Maybe you're running a pre-sale.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a holiday that you're working through. Any larger spikes in inventory and order volume is really when I would start looking for a 3PL.
Do you find like brands that maybe they're mature in the sense that like they're driving regular orders every day and they anticipate the seasonal spike? We're going to have a huge Q4. Do you see an influx of interest and action, right? I think everybody's like, yeah, maybe we should just like outsource this, and then they don't take action. But like, do you see brands of all sizes, like when are they doing that? Or if you made a recommendation, like when you should, if you're thinking about doing this for seasonality, this is when you need to start getting your ducks in a row. I think on the affiliate side or on the software side, marketing tech software side, we definitely see surges of people that are like, we're going to do affiliate in Q4 and it's September 15th. And they're like, installing the app. And it's like, there's steps to this process of getting affiliates and getting products seeded and getting content created that you may want to consider a little bit earlier. But what about from your end? Like, what do you see? Like, is that a common thing? Is there a time period where like, just give yourself this kind of buffer? Like, what's the kind of maybe standard, like operational shift over to a 3PL for a brand that's doing, 10, 15 orders a day?
Sure thing. Yeah, I would say definitely allot yourself anywhere from 1 to 2 months, right? Okay. To fully scope various different partners. There's a lot of marketplaces out there where they will help you and assist you in, kind of circumnavigating all of the different 3PL options. As a 3PL owner, I can admit firsthand on behalf of the industry, it's a little overwhelming and it's a little complicated. A lot of people do things a little differently. Yeah. But there's a lot of really, really, really good partners in the space that can help you navigate that. But usually onboarding for, emerging brands really only takes a couple of weeks. A lot of the technology is pretty uniform, I would say, across the industry, heavily API related, very easy to connect and to sync. If that's not the case, I would personally run in the other direction because it's so prevalent within the industry. But yeah, probably a month or two.
Okay.
to really go through those and to learn about your 3PL, how they might operate, how your brand, kind of really sits into their operations, and to make sure you have time to essentially date before really, really, really commit to a long-term partnership with a service provider like a 3PL.
Yeah, I think that, so we talked about that, and I worked at a marketing agency for 8 years. And one of the things that I observed is that uh, people really do want to work with people that they enjoy interactions with. And so getting a feel for a partner, knowing ideally this is actually someone who wants to help me succeed, not just sort of do the bare minimum. Uh, it'll ensure just sort of like mutual success, or at least more success on the side of your brand. You won't dread the conversations. You know that you can rely on them for feedback in the process. How you might potentially streamline some of the operations, or how you're shipping to save a little bit of money. Identify other things that you could pull into bundles, and like we could just be more cost effective this way and try to grow your business, which I think people tend to think of certain tools, even like affiliate tracking software. It's like, oh, it does its thing and that's it. But when it doesn't quite do its thing, or you have a question that maybe is a little bit beyond the scope, that's when it's more on the, well, did you find a good partner that you can reach out to, and that you feel confident that you're going to get good response back, and they're going to understand what you're trying to do, and I can navigate this instead of just feeling a little bit on my own. I don't know if you add anything to that.
It's a big thing, especially doing it for the very first time in transitioning to a 3PL or any agency and partnership. I liken it to kind of dropping your kids off at daycare. It's a little nerve wracking the first couple of times you do it, but there's a lot of infrastructure in place of brands of similar size, of similar complexity, channel mix, that I think 3PLs are, and the good operating 3PLs are operating in those systems day in and day out. So although it might seem like a lot and very, very, very challenging to replicate, on the brand perspective, I would just kind of call out and double click on that. A lot of really, really, really good operating 3PLs are doing this for dozens and possibly even hundreds of brands day in and day out.
Yeah, recognizing that even if your situation as a business it's uniquely yours, the scenarios you're going through are less unique, though, because people have been shipping similarly sized, similarly weighted things. Maybe there's something that maybe the first time somebody started shipping a mattress in a box, right? You squish it down, roll it up. Yeah, that's a probably unique logistical challenge the first time around. But now it becomes more normal as people, just continue to get into that space. So partnering with 3PLs, like in my head, it's kind of an all or nothing thing. Like, oh, now I just have given this all away. But when we were talking, I think that you had alluded to, like, there's potential value in thinking this more channel by channel, right? Like, oh, you're doing fulfilled by Amazon. That's great. What happens if if they run out of inventory, right? Now you're not selling. Like, there's different ways to think about working with a 3PL, beyond just like, now you've just surrendered it all over. Of course, like that might make sense to do, but what are some of the sort of wrinkles or use cases that you've seen that work for those merchants or brands that are, 12, 15, 20, 50 orders a day? Maybe they're $1 million a year brand, or maybe they're a $10 million a year brand and up. How do you see people use different 3PLs? What makes sense as they're sort of navigating the space?
Sure thing. Yeah, I think there's a few different ways to bifurcate it. Can certainly do it geographically, right? So maybe you're on the West Coast and all of your products come in through a East Coast port, right? You can have an East Coast 3PL that can receive those goods and ship that out to the large portion of the population here in the U.S. that lives on the East Coast, even primarily the Northeast. You could bifurcate it by sales channel, right? So maybe Shopify is a really, really, really good top of funnel kind of awareness tool for you, but you end up doing a lot of your sales through Amazon. Maybe the inverse is also true too. Prepping that inventory, sending it to Amazon, having that 3PL just manage that Amazon prep and even possibly fulfillment is another way to introduce a 3PL kind of into your brand ecosystem. But I think there's a really, really, really big benefit of trying to tie where your customers are located, where your manufacturing partners or the ports are going to be, and where your 3PL can be located. When we have alignment on all three of those kind of major key areas, there's a lot of cost and a lot of speed advantages that a brand doesn't have to fully jump in with 2 feet and sign up and commit all sales channels, all SKUs, everything to that 3PL. And there's ways to break it apart to kind of right size the opportunity and what you're looking to outsource to a fulfillment partner.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you noted towards the beginning of that was like shipping things out to Amazon, and I had touched on this before, but understanding, a partner like you all will have a very firm understanding, like, hey, getting deliveries to Amazon, this, like, we have to hit certain SLAs that you might have in place with them in order to ship things. It's not always just thinking about that one component of getting it to the customer. Of course you do, right? I hate ordering things and being told that they're going to be there in 2 days and they're here on the following Monday. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought that I paid for 2-day shipping here. Or I thought I got it for free. Yeah, and on the user side, like I won't do anything about that. But if you're working with retailers, if you're working with Amazon, there's repercussions to not getting things to where you need them to be at the time that they expect them to be. And I don't know if do you all help work with brands as they're starting to become featured in these larger retailers? They're starting to become more nationally wholesaled, where you're like, hey, we got to be on top of this, like sort of guiding them through that process?
1000%. Yeah. So we typically see brands, especially emerging D2C brands, just as a pure play D2C company, usually on 1 to 2 sales channels, and then they become omni-channel from there. The next evolution is really getting into major retailers, but through a dropship program. So that's where partners like SPS Commerce and all those EDI connections come through, where you're selling on those marketplaces, but the seller, the merchant, the 3PL is still doing a lot of that fulfillment. All the way through getting into those brick and mortar stores and locations, prepping that inventory, very similar to how it would be prepped and shipped into Amazon, but shipping it into one of the distribution centers for those major retailers. Going through that process for lots of different brands. Every retailer is a little different, but they're very meticulous. Usually comes with a 40-page standard operating procedure detailing everything from label placement, how the pallets are stacked, the quality and the type of pallets you can use, the thickness of the wrap that you have to do to contain the items on the pallet so they don't break it inbound shipping. They're very, very, very meticulous, over 40 pages meticulous. And having a 3PL that can synthesize a lot of that data, understand it, and perform it correctly, so there's not chargebacks and there's not issues once it gets into that DC, is very, very, very helpful for a lot of brands, especially going through it for the first time.
So I think another way to put it is, if your uncle says that he can just ship it, like, probably not best to hand it over to someone that doesn't quite know what they're doing. Leveraging that expertise is really important to keep these partnerships with the folks that are growing your brand in place. You have to keep them super healthy. Switching gears, maybe more on the nose tied to affiliate. We will have folks watching this and be thinking to themselves, like, how does the 3PL interact with when I'm doing things like seeding, or I've got ambassadors, or I want to send things to my top 50 performing affiliates, or I've got a big influencer partnership and I want to present them a few options of things that they might feature. How does that process play in when it's not it's not a traditional order, right? Like oh yeah, it's just regular orders, but maybe brands are doing things a little bit differently when they get an inbound request from a macro influencer, like, oh, this is great. Let's like put a nice note in there. Let's like really make up the presentation because maybe they're going to show it on the camera. Like, how do you guys think about sort of like different types of purchases in the sense of like the end user is not necessarily like a pure customer. Sometimes they're an affiliate. They're somebody that's going to be promoting this product.
Yeah. Few different ways to do it, right? So there's a manual way of doing it. I would say that is a good solution. It's not the best solution, but it's a good solution if they're very, very small and infrequent. A lot of 3PLs, very similar to us, have a customer portal where it's web-based, it's available 24/7, 365, and we can go in there and we can add in different orders. We can make one order, we can make hundreds of orders at a time. So that's a manual way of doing it. There's obviously a lot of communication, whether you're trading Slacks back and forth or emails, or you're jumping on a quick call just to get alignment. There's certainly a manual and a very inexpensive way of doing it. The way that I would think about it, though, at scale is systematizing that process so it mirrors other workflows, so that the affiliate or influencer orders and order ingestion into the system look similar to other type of orders, whether they're wholesale, whether they're bulk, B2B, so on and so forth. And my recommendation would be to put those orders into maybe your Shopify. You can manage all of your other orders through Shopify. That's a really, really good record of truth. And then you utilizing the different workflows that Shopify allows for and the use of tags. So you can tag, this is an influencer order, and when it's an influencer order, here's what we do. We use this specific type of packaging. We include these 2 to 3 inserts. It's presented in the packaging like this, and having a full SOP for that. So whether you have one influencer or affiliate type of order, or you have them sporadically throughout the days and the weeks, and the business can kind of more or less just operate instead of needing that minute-to-minute direct intervention from the brand founder. Systematizing all of that work really, 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 really helps, not only for the affiliate and the influencer space, but when you start getting into other specialty type of orders, like I mentioned, wholesale specifically as well too. Systematizing all of that and blending that into how the 3PL best receives and processes orders, and making sure there's alignment on that is very, 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 very critical.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times when I talk to brands, like they might think, oh, if I want to over deliver on the experience for this person that might be promoting my product, I can't always trust somebody else to do it. I just want to do it myself. But if you actually do document it really well, here's what it's supposed to look like, here's what's going to be included. It's just another shipment, right? It's just another procedure that's like, well, we just do that over here. So you could still rely on a partner to help with that scale and still delivering on the quality. You don't have to just bear the burden of like, I guess I just have to do this part myself. Now, maybe you do the first few times where you just, I like how this looked. And this seemed to be a better way of getting it over to the affiliate. They responded great. But now how do we get this into our system? And it sounds like also you choose the right type of 3PL partner. The brand themselves can come to you and say, hey, Mike, how do we want to do this? Like, how can we do this? And then, the right partner is saying, here's how we get this information ingested into here so that we can't just deliver the same experience. Maybe I'm putting a little bit of words in your mouth, but that's sort of my takeaway.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would consider 3PLs to kind of fit into 2 different buckets. The first bucket would be reactive. Things happen and then we react to them. The other bucket would be proactive, right? So the 3PL is a true extension of your brand. They are familiar with the delivery process, how you want your brand to be received by your customers, what's important to you. Are you cost sensitive in certain areas? Or do you really, really, really want to go for that wow factor? And having a 3PL and an operating partner that can understand your specific nuances and constraints to deliver that end customer result, those are where the best 3PLs and the best 3PL brand partnerships really, really, really lie. And I would challenge a lot of brands to put that onus back on their 3PL, and help them through that, of course, and really understand and establish that relationship. But the best 3PLs are going to take that and run with it, and they are going to much more often come to you with suggestions and ideas and updated processes versus you having to chase them down and say, no, 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 like this is really good. Yeah, it went out on time and it was delivered. That's not really what I was looking for. What I was really looking for was A, B, and C to also get done. And like I said, the best brand and 3PL relationships, it's a really, really, really good, strong relationship.
Yeah, it's mimicking what you would have internally, but then recognizing, but I don't really want to have a giant warehouse necessarily. I don't want to have to, like, just having a giant warehouse is one thing, but you will have to receive all of the goods and you will have to take them off of the truck, off of the pallet, put them over here. Now put them back. Like all of that process, what you're trying to do is just simply lean into someone's skills, but sort of maintain that closeness of relationship of like, I can ask you questions though, like you are an employee that works here. You're super knowledgeable, but I can trust that you also have just much broader experience. It really does like sort of remind me of like the paid ads agency that I used to work at, where it's like, we really trust your expertise, that you really want to be integrated into this. And that's how we can drive the most success. I think the closing question I have, just because we have like an affiliate lens and an influencer lens on things, we talked to Rex, who is the co-founder of Orbit Key, a few weeks back, and they're a brand that launches products on Kickstarter and like sort of generate interest. And then there's going to be this, hey, this is when it's going to be shipped out type of date. Or, we have 10,000 people that want this key ring. How do you guys approach that when it happens, both sort of planned, hey, we're going to have a lot of interest, so we're going to send you a bunch of stuff. Hopefully the forecast and the actual is pretty close, right? And so it's a happy story. How do you guys handle those where it's a bit pre-planned? And then how do you navigate scenarios where it's a bit more of a surprise? Like once I was working at a company, we had a mobile app, and a picture of our mobile app was on the front of the Wall Street Journal or the USA. I think it was USA Today. It's just a picture of the mobile, and it just exploded. Well, it's a mobile app, so it doesn't really matter. It did actually cause some things to crash because it was a lot of users, but it wasn't a physical good, right? So we could just kind of adapt there. But maybe we'll start first with like when we know that this is going to be we want to ship a bunch of stuff out at one time. And then the second question would be, what happens when it's a surprise? Something just kind of explodes. We didn't realize a celebrity was going to be wearing our whatever. How do you navigate those situations for brands?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's something that happens all the time, and working with platforms similar to Reversion, like that's kind of the plan, right? Is to go viral, to get a lot of momentum very quickly and, scale appropriately. So obviously when it's planned, it's going to be a little easier to manage, right? There's a lot of demand, forecasting and inventory planning type of tools available. AI is making that a lot easier than typically what it used to be. If you're not well versed in that or modeling many of those kind of demand forecasting attributes, find a partner, find a tool, find a technology that is, and really, really, really leverage that. I would say that in the worst case scenario, take a few items into consideration. Take your current on-hand inventory and then your desired safety stock. So typically desired safety stocks about 30 to 60 days of trailing sales. So whatever you sold in the last 1 to 2 months, minimally have that as safety stock and really don't sell into that. A lot of brands also need to take into consideration, but many of them don't, is manufacturing lead times and adding buffers to that, right? So if you have 6 weeks of on-hand inventory, but it takes 4 weeks to turn around the manufacturing PO and to get that received in, you're really cutting it close. And if you go viral within that time, you're very easily running into backstock. So having a really good understanding of kind of all of those attributes helps smooth out some of the burden when it is planned. When it's not planned, communication is key, right? There's not a lot of obviously planning you can do if it's catching a lot of people by surprise, but implementing a lot of these like best practices from the get-go will help at least smooth out the peaks and valleys of an intense amount of order volume in a very short period of time. And I would say that's on the vendor side. On the customer side, setting expectations and communicating with them as well too. After you've connected with your manufacturer and your 3PL, and you've identified a timeline to clear out all of those orders and to get those into the postal system, communicating with your customers, even during the checkout experience, and setting expectations of, hey, great news, things went really good for us. Thank you for being one of the many supporters of this brand and our journey. To set expectations appropriately, orders are going to ship out within 2 weeks. That's when we're going to receive stock, and we're going to work as quickly as we possibly can. And providing incentives, I would say as well too, for having those customers originally trust you and your brand. And then for things not to go 100% perfect, it's not the end of the world. But to get them as a long-term customer and to really thank them for their patience, offering some sort of either credit, whether it's store credit or a small refund, or maybe expedited shipping, if the brand can afford that, of course. Those are all very nice things that we've seen really high-performing brands really lean into.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head that communication with the customer is really important. But I wouldn't, just from what I've seen working with brands for the past 15 years or so, it's so easy for competitors to creep up. And if you're beginning to see like we're getting some traction here, that's sort of like building up that backstock of inventory to the levels that are appropriate. I know that people hate to buy things and have them sit, but it's really easy now to have a completely different alternative product that is not yours, but maybe even comes from the same manufacturer, and you lose a customer, right? And so getting all those ducks in a row, don't just rely on just send them an email and they'll be okay. Maybe the first time, right? But repeatedly, you'll get more frustrated customers than anything else. And so you definitely want to make sure that you deliver it there. But it definitely sounds like the right 3PL is also communicating, hey, we're getting all of this activity. I'm sure that you're aware of it. Like, what's the deal? Like, we're going to start running through inventory. What's the plan? Like, how do we tackle this?
Absolutely. What I would also add on that really quickly as well is that there's a lot of mechanisms in place to set up those safety stock quantities and alerts so that it's not yet another thing that the brand owner has to remember, the 3PL has to remember. There's some calculations. A really good 3PL is going to help identify what that calculation is, taking into consideration capital constraints and the whole process on that. So that would be another thing that I would call out as well.
Awesome. Well, Mike, we're about at time. If folks wanted to talk to you or somebody at Remix, where can they find you?
Absolutely. Best place to find us is going to be on LinkedIn and our website. So remixlogistics.com. We have a intake form. Feel free to fill that out. It's very likely that I personally will be involved. in that as well too. And whether it's a 3PL sales or if it's just lending an ear and saying, hey, you're someone within the industry, I'm just trying to, kind of better understand this as well too. No pressure, here to help, happy to help. I know it's very, very, very challenging to sort through all of those different options, and happy to just do my part and point people in the right direction.
Awesome. So as long as you're not on the ski slopes or watching the Carolina Hurricanes beat the Buffalo Sabres, you'll be available.
I don't know. Time will tell.
Yeah, I say that after they got smoked 5-1 last night. But thank you everyone for joining, for watching this later. Mike, again, thank you for the time. Really enjoyed the conversation. And we will see everybody next time. Have a great day.